Hi everybody, Dan Illman, Mike Beer, Matt Bernier. The Saturday DRFBets race of the day is the second jewel in racing's Triple Crown. Let's throw up the field for the Grade 1 Preakness Stakes. We're going 1 3/16. $1.5 million is the purse. Approximate post time 6:48. You can access free formulator past performances for the Preakness on the Race of the Day event page at drf.com. Download them, handicap along with us. We'll take the field in post position order, beginning with the number 1, War of Will. And Matt, Mark Casse was not happy to draw the rail again.
No, this is 2 Triple Crown races in a row that he's been down on the inside. I have to be honest, I don't think the rail is nearly as big a deal in the Preakness as it is in the Kentucky Derby. And even having said that, I thought he ran just fine in the Derby. He ran kind of the way I thought he would, as a horse that might be a little bit on the short side, given that I don't think he got anything out of the Louisiana Derby. And really his most recent representative race was the Risen Star all the way back in February. Thought he got tired at the end of the race, and obviously there was a little bit of controversy where he was impeded. If you like this horse, I don't think it should be based on the trouble in the Derby. I think it should be on the idea that he needed a race before he was going to peak in Baltimore.
Yeah, I kind of agree with all that stuff. I mean, I'm actually quite surprised at all the hand-wringing over him drawing the rail in the Preakness. To me, he actually got a great draw on the inside with tactical speed. And if he can get the trip on Saturday that he got in the Kentucky Derby until there was trouble at the 5/16 pole, they would have to be perfectly happy with that. He's a tactical horse. He can get the right trip in this race. I do think he's a contender. I just happen not to love this horse, but I do think he could win this race.
Mike, the number 2 Bourbon War was just compromised in the Florida Derby by a complete lack of pace. They basically ran 1-2 all the way around the track. Bourbon War did his best to finish 4th. He is now getting blinkers for a good trainer in Mark Henning, and I can see him sitting in the second flight behind a solid pace.
Yeah, we'll see what kind of trip he gets. I guess you wouldn't want him to be too far away in here, but if he can just sort of get himself maybe into mid-pack or a little bit beyond that, I think that would be okay for him. He did not have the right setup last time. I think he has a legitimate excuse for his Florida Derby. His race 2 starts back, I think, is actually a race that would give him a look in here. He had a better setup that day. He ran very well and finished close to Code of Honor. If he gets a setup in this race and gets the right kind of trip, I think he's a horse who could take a big step forward on Saturday.
Yeah, this is a horse to me. Had he gotten into the Kentucky Derby or they had entered him, he would have been one of the horses that would have taken some money in a spot like that. The equipment change, I think that should help him, sharpen him up a little bit when the real running begins. To me, if you don't like either of the 2 favorites coming out of the Derby, he's the logical alternative.
And in that aforementioned Fountain of Youth, he finished ahead of Vekoma, who came back to win the Bluegrass. The number 3 is Warrior's Charge. I want to throw up the Timeform US pace projector. Matt, you and I might disagree with this year's Preakness pace projector. Warrior's Charge seemingly is the speed nearest the rail. Timeform US disagrees. No matter what, he is in razor-sharp form, and he looks to be getting better, and he's got figs that make him a contender.
I think it's hard to ignore that his 2 best races, his 2 wins to date, both came in gate-to-wire fashion. They're both in the most recent runs. I think being down on the inside there, Javier, you've got one way to go. That's to send him. If somebody else is hell-bent on the lead, then you know what? You're going to have to work something out. But to me, I'm not convinced that he can win sitting off of a target just yet. He hasn't proven that he can. And given where he's drawn, I think you just got to go.
Yeah, if it was mine, I'd be telling Castellano to put him right on the front again, because it's obvious that his last 2 races are his best 2 now. Is he going to be able to just go straight to the lead and control this thing like he did those last 2 starts? That, to me, seems very unlikely. But he looks like a horse who is headed the right way. He does look like he has a lot of talent, and he did run legitimately fast last time.
The beaten favorite in the Kentucky Derby is back for more in the Preakness. Mike, that's the number 4, Improbable. Let's talk a little bit about his trip in the Derby. Did you really see any excuses? And what makes you think that he's going to turn it around on Saturday?
I mean, I think overall, as far as his Derby goes, considering the trip that he got most of the way around there, I think for most derbies, you have to take that in a 20-horse field. Everything went pretty well for him. I thought he got an overall good trip. He was clear at the top of the stretch, and he tried. He just couldn't really get there. He got outfinished at the end. I think it sort of brings the distance back into question for him. I think there are some real ideas that he just might not want to go this far, and I think that is a real concern for a horse who's going to be the favorite in here. I also think he's as talented as anyone in here. He is the horse to beat on Saturday, and I look at him, guys, I don't know if anybody agrees with this, 2 sloppy tracks in a row where he did run fine. I wonder if this horse doesn't really like a sloppy track and will be better back on fast dirt.
I agree with everything Mike said. I do wonder if you're getting to the point where you have to consider the idea that maybe the distance isn't going to be a benefit for him as they go longer. Maybe he'll need shorter when it's all said and done. But For the Derby, I thought he had a perfect trip, and he just never really looked like he was going to threaten at any point. He ran a fine race, inoffensive, but he never looked like a winner. I think if you like him, you have to hope that getting back to a fast track is going to get him back on track.
Matt, the young high-percentage trainer Brad Cox has 2 in here. We already talked about Warrior's Charge, who was supplemented to this race for a very confident $150,000. He also has Owendale, a horse that's shown glimpses of potential throughout his career, but has been a little bit inconsistent. I really thought he might have put it all together last time out in the Grade 3 Lexington, making a really sharp, wide move on the turn, and then going on with it to win.
Yeah, Owendale for me is going to be the horse that either makes or breaks me because I don't have him anywhere. I don't really know where the Lexington came from. I thought he was awesome that day, and based on what he had done prior, I didn't see that kind of racehorse. All of a sudden, he blitzed that field rounding the far turn at Keeneland. To me, if he runs that race, he's a major player in this spot. I just want to know, is he going to be able to do that against better horses now?
Boy, Matt and I totally see this horse the same way. I cannot knock his Lexington. I don't think there's any way to take that race apart and just think he didn't run a really good race last time. I just want to see him do it again because I didn't really like any of his races prior to that. Listen, maybe he's just turned the corner and he's a big player in this division going forward, but I want to see him do it on Saturday.
The great Wayne Lucas, I believe, has won this race 6 times. He's going to throw a long shot out there this year in the 6 Market King, who was just well beaten in the Bluegrass last time out. Now, he was entered in the Pat Day Mile, Mike. He was scratched at the gate. Not exactly ideal preparation leading up to a big race like the Preakness.
No, especially when the most recent race showing now, because he was scratched on Derby Day, is a 39 buyer in the Bluegrass. This horse has run some good races. He doesn't make that much sense to me in this race.
On paper, he's tough to recommend. The pace projector, if you believe he's going to be out there and be a major pace presence, maybe he's a bit of a fly in the ointment for the forwardly placed horses, but from a win standpoint, I can't recommend.
Matt, usually the local horses are nice story, there's the local flavor, but they're usually long shots and deservedly so. Not so this year with the number 7, Always Mining, who has won 6 races in a row and has just simply been the scourge of the 3-year-old division in Maryland all year long. And he's got figs, and he can be close to the pace.
I'll tell you what, I think this is a legitimate racehorse, and the way that he's continued to come along slowly but surely, I have no reason to believe he won't run well here on Saturday. For me, the question is going to be from a running style standpoint. It's one thing when you're 1 to 20 to sit off of horses and just loop them and you're better than everyone. I still think his best runs are when he's out on the lead controlling things. I don't know that he's fast enough to do that on Saturday, and even if he is, I don't know if that's the best opportunity for him to win this race.
Yeah, I mean, I have the same concerns that Matt does about him. I don't know if he's going to be able to sit a trip like that against these horses and still run his very best race. But I'll tell you what, this horse is pretty good. I like the form that he's in quite a bit. I know this is the toughest test to date for this horse, but I want to use this horse somewhere. I think he's talented.
It's worth noting that some of the horses he's beaten have come back to do some good things. He beat Win, who had a little trouble in the heft. That horse came back to run his career best at Tampa Bay. He's also in this field. He beat Gray Magician, who came back to run second in the UAE Derby. He beat Jovia in the private terms. That horse came back to win the Long Branch at Monmouth last week. I think he fits in here. He's an interesting, certainly local horse. The number 8 is Signal Man, Mike, and I think this horse is sneaky at a price because if you give him a fast pace, he always has a puncher's chance, and I think he is slowly developing for trainer Kenny McPeak. I thought the Fountain of Youth was nothing but a prep race where they basically kept him down towards the rail and just let him finish on his own, and in the Bluegrass, he did a little bit better. I think he's rounding into this race the right way. I want to use him underneath in single race exotics.
I can't argue with any of that. I would use him underneath as well because I did like him a little bit as a 2-year-old, and I do think he is still heading the right way, but boy, he's in a position now where he has to take a huge step forward in this race. I'll concede that the Fountain of Youth might have been a prep for him, but I wanted to see him finish with at least a little bit of interest in that race, and he didn't really do it. He ran fine last time, but his effort in the Bluegrass isn't getting him anything in here.
Yeah, I'm not going to talk anyone out of trying to use him underneath at a big price. He's not for me. I haven't seen a heck of a lot of improvement from 2 to 3, but like you guys said, he is slowly but surely improving. I just think he's going to need to take such a significant step forward here to be even remotely contending in this spot.
Matt the Maiden, the number 9 Bodie Express, was second in the Florida Derby. He had a lot of things go his way that day because there was no pace and they basically ran 1-2 all the way around the track. He was impeded in the Kentucky Derby, although I don't think he was winning even with a clean trip, but this horse is better than your average maiden. There's no doubt about it, and he's another horse that could impact the pace of this race.
Yeah, from a numbers standpoint, he's really not that far off from some of the contenders in here. But, I mean, we're still talking about a maiden through 6 lifetime starts. It would seem a little bit improbable that he's going to go out there and break his maiden in a race like the Preakness. But, again, we've seen crazier things happen. I think he has a little bit of tactical ability. I wouldn't talk anybody out of using him underneath. I still have a hard time seeing him win.
Yeah, I agree with with everything you said, Dan. I mean, he's certainly better than your average maiden, but I can't see this horse being competitive in the Preakness.
Late addition to this field, the number 10 Everfast, Mike. This horse is riding a 9-race losing streak. He did finish second at 128 to 1 in the Holy Bull when he got a very favorable pace scenario. That obviously did not happen in the Florida Derby. I did like that he was a little bit closer to the pace last time out in the Pat Day Mile. He sort of ran evenly. Something tells me he might be one of those late running sprinter middle distance types.
Yeah, I wonder how far he wants to go. Listen, his Holy Bull, it wasn't terrible, even though he was a huge price in there. And listen, he was a lot closer to the pace in that race than the winner was. And so I didn't think, I thought that race maybe suggested he had a little bit more upside. Unfortunately for him, he hasn't really done anything since then. I don't see him in this race.
I suppose maybe he can lay a little bit closer to the pace. As you guys alluded to, the Holy Bull was a fast pace. That most recent run, I understand he was 4 lengths off of it, but that was a hot pace in the Pat Day as well. I just don't really have anything on paper that I can recommend him for.
Matt, Laughing Fox is slowly creeping forward from a buyer perspective. He did get a nice pace setup to win the Oaklawn Invitational last time out. They tried him in the Rebel, no match for Omaha Beach. They tried him in the Arkansas Derby, a little better, but still finished behind both Omaha Beach and Improbable. He's another horse hoping for a hot pace, hoping for a clean trip.
I think he's a decent horse. I think he's more a stayer at this point. He's going to need a really hot pace to accentuate that late kick. But if you're playing any kind of a superfecta, I could see him being a bit of a late plotter, just passing some tired horses at the end.
I can too. I mean, I think this is a Preakness that actually shapes up to have a pretty good pace for him too. And I think he will be running at the end. I can't see him getting up, for first or second in here, maybe not even third, but he could get a piece of this.
Mike, the El Camino Real Derby winner is the number 12, Another Twist of Fate. And while he has yet to win on dirt, he's shown that he can step on that surface with good efforts in both the Sunland Derby and the Lexington Stakes. The latter a race in which he was boxed in just a little bit.
Yeah, he was boxed in, and he was boxed in at a time when Owendale was making a big run out in the clear to take that race over. I thought he ran fine. I thought his Sunland Derby was actually fine as well. And I am a fan of this horse. I think he will go at least this far. It seems like distance is no problem. Dan, you made an interesting point to me earlier too, and that I really, you mentioned that he's a horse who is at his best when he's in the clear and can really build up his momentum and keep going. And when you watch his races at Golden Gate, that's exactly what he was doing. I love the way he was finishing in those races. If he can get a clean trip in this race and be clear, I think he can make some noise in here.
Yeah, I have to be honest. I keep going back to looking at his running style out at Golden Gate, and even these 2 most recent runs, while he hasn't been embarrassed in either of them, he's been in amongst horses, and he just hasn't seemed to love life there. Even Blaine Wright, I believe, at one point said he didn't really love being in amongst horses. He may have to take the long way around here, but there's a real scenario where he's 3-4 wide going into the first turn, but he's in the clear, and I do wonder if you like this horse, maybe that's the kind of trip you do want.
Outside post for the 13 win, Matt. This horse has natural ability. Perhaps just as much as anyone in this race. It just might be that this distance is a little bit too far for him. We loved the way he won the Pasco going 7 furlongs, and I thought he had excuses in both the Tampa Bay Derby and the Bluegrass. Very wide trip at Tampa Bay, and the Bluegrass steadied at a key point in that race, and then re-rallied to finish a good second. In the Derby, I don't think he had a bad trip at all. Maybe they waited a little bit too long to produce him. Maybe they were doing that because they were worried about him staying the distance.
It's possible. I think he got a little bit of too passive a ride in the Derby. Not saying he was going to threaten to win the race, but you wait till the quarter pole. You got a lot of ground to make up in a short amount of time. He had the 5th fastest final quarter of the Kentucky Derby. Just put that into perspective. So I still don't know what he actually wants. Maybe he is a 1-turn horse. Maybe 2 turns within his scope. I'm going to use him underneath here. The little equipment change, we'll find out if that makes any sort of difference. I want to use him underneath in big exotics.
Yeah, I'm still a fan of this horse. I'm starting to lose the faith in him as a 2-turn horse, a 2-turn distance horse. We'll see if he can do better in this race. He's a tough use for me because as much as I like him, I'm not sure he wants to go this far.
Let's take a look at our top selections for this year's Preakness Stakes. Mike, make a case for Bourbon War and give me numbers.
I just think he's an interesting horse, sort of as the new face in this race. I've liked liked him from the start. I think he has a lot of talent and some ability, and I think this race could set up really well for him. He should be running at the end of this race. I don't know if I'm getting 12 to 1 on him, guys, but I like him. I'm not against Improbable as the horse to beat in here. I put him second. I just don't think you're supposed to take a short price on him in this race. And I'm using 2 other horses. I'm using another Twist of Fate. I've been a fan from day one. I think we'll get this far, and I'm using the Local Hope Always Mining.
Matt, you've kept the faith with War of Will. He was so impressive winning those races at the fairgrounds over the winter and into the spring. Of course, he was impeded in the Derby. If he can get to the outside where he really ran some of his better races at the fairgrounds, I'd like him a lot better, but he certainly fits with his best race.
It's not an apples-to-apples comparison, but go back last year, Bravazzo almost did all the same things. He was a force leading into Louisiana Derby. Something went wrong. He didn't have a race essentially till the Kentucky Derby, puts in a bin move, flattens out, comes back, nearly beats Justified 2 weeks later. I think War of Will is going to run the best race of his life. If it's good enough or not, we'll find out on Saturday, but I want him. I think Bourbon War is the logical alternative outside of the 2 main players, whether it's War of Will or Improbable. I'm at 1, 2, 4, 13.
I agree with Mike. Improbable probably the horse to beat, but I don't really want to take a very short price on him, so I'm going to look at some bigger priced alternatives, beginning with Owendale. And yes, he's a little bit inconsistent, and I can certainly understand the guys' comments that they want to see it again, but I don't want to see it again if he's going off at 12 to 1. I think he might have found himself. I love the way he made that bid on the turn, and I think he's going to get a fast pace. Brad Cox, a fantastic trainer. He seems like he's training quickly leading up to this race. I'm going to use a little bit of win-win-win with the addition of blinkers. I think he's going to get out of the gate a little bit better this time, and that's kind of been the key for him. I don't think he's going to be up close, but I think he can sit in mid-pack, and if this pace is fast, he has shown a little bit of a burst, and Matt showed his kick in the Kentucky Derby. He came home pretty quick that day. I'm going 5, 13, 3, and 4 in the Preakness. Remember the DRFBets money back offer for all race of the days this month on DRFTV. That's $7 to win on any selection in any race of the day, including the Preakness. If your bet finishes second or third, you get your money back. Learn more at promos.drf.com. Approximate post time for the Grade 1 Preakness is 6:48 Eastern. Good luck.